leading for almost the entire race and then ending the way it did, it was definitely detrimental.
No idea why they decided to dive bomb, but decided to take me out in the process as well, and that kind of ruined my race.
You actually met Lewis Hamilton, did you?
I did. I heard a British accent to my right of me, and his face mask was kind of down, so you can kind of see half his face a little bit, but not his eyeballs and the tattoos.
I don't think I've ever heard someone say eyeballs to describe your top 3 local heroes.
I'd say my car chief, my first car chief was
Oh, he's going to be mad about that one.
Alex Garcia, a 24-year-old professional racer born and raised in Miami, is the 2024 TCA Vice Champion and the 2024 TC America Rookie of the Year.
Welcome to our first episode ever of a show that we like to call FullGrip, curated by your team here at PolePace. We're really excited to announce our first episode ever, and we are very happy to announce that our first guest ever is actually Alex Garcia, one of our co-founders who's actually in motorsports himself. This year, you will be piloting the GR86 and the GT4 Aston Martin Vantage, if that's correct me if I'm wrong. But either way, do want to thank you a lot for taking the time to spend it with us and to be on your own podcast, per se. So definitely want to thank you for being here. But first and foremost, just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself the best you can. If that's ever a thing that you like to do. When you walk up to somebody, what's the first thing you say when you shake their hand?
Thank you so much for putting me on the show here. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Alex Garcia, 24-year-old from Miami, born and raised. And yeah, man, I'm super excited to be here, and I'm excited for today's talk.
Well, let's jump right into it. I think that there's definitely a lot that we could unpack. A lot that happened last season, ups, downs, definitely a huge improvement from year 1 to year 2. You actually changed teams from year 1 to year 2. I think there's so much that I definitely want to talk about. I think that a lot of drivers can relate to listening to this in the process of like how much can happen from one year to another. I definitely want to ask you really, first and foremost, you went from driving the first year just the GR86, and then the year after that, you went and drove the GR86 plus the Honda SI, a Formula F4 car, and then also drove at the end of the season the Aston Martin Vantage GT4. So what was that like, just going from one year to another, driving so many different cars?
Yeah, man. So the first year, it was a really good stepping stone for me and a learning point of stepping into this racing world, into the racing community. We came not from racing at all. We started getting into track days later on in life compared to most drivers. Started pretty late at 15, 16. My brother got into it, then he kind of transitioned it over to my dad and me. So we just all started getting into cars, and then we started racing. After 3 or 4 years of doing that, we kind of wanted to step up and see if we can get into pro racing and see how well we can compete against others with the experience and knowledge that we've gained over the last couple of years. So tried stepping into GR the first year in 23, and there was small glimpses of success throughout the year, which gave me more motivation to continue with this career and actually take a full shot of it, go 100% into it, give it all my best, and see what the results can produce. And after the first year, it was kind of rough. It was a little bit unmotivating, to say the least, but I just kept on trying. It was the small glimpses of success really motivated me to do even better and to work harder during the offseason for the following year. And I had switched teams over the offseason and I joined Skip Barber Racing School, and they have some amazing resources, great coaches, and they have curated me into what I am today.
Yeah, I do want to go into that a lot more for sure. Like the changing from one team to another. Can you talk a little bit about just going from, like, obviously the team that you were at before, for the sake of, just leaving them out of the conversation. But can you talk a little bit about the biggest difference going from your first year, maybe you weren't really as experienced on the track, to then the second year going to Skip Barber, who's kind of definitely a bigger operation in terms of what they were doing. They were definitely doing this before. And they're also a racing school, by the way. So they definitely had the resources to be at the track, fully equipped and staffed. What was kind of the biggest difference that you noticed when you went from one team to the other?
Yeah, I think it was just a lack of experience coming into the sport and not personally getting more experience and asking around before just hopping straight into the sport. We kind of just went with what we had there, and we, took a shot of it, tried racing with it, and, we did the best we could with what we had. But definitely after talking with other teams throughout the year and seeing what other resources other teams are supplying their drivers and seeing the efforts that the teams are putting in for the drivers versus what we were getting, we just weren't happy at the moment. So that's why we had transitioned over to a team that had the capabilities to provide all the resources to their drivers and for them to actually succeed with it. So the biggest difference really was just all the coaching and just how persistent they are on making you the better driver.
And that's always bittersweet, right? Like going from one team to another. I mean, you definitely get attached to these guys during the year, and it's like even just being at the paddock and being around them and stuff like that. So that's always tough. And kudos to you for being able to handle that transition as well as best you could. And I mean, you went from literally sitting the bottom of the pack. I was at Indy 2023, and I'll never forget that you and Michael were at had an all-out, like, just a drag race to the finish line, and you guys were racing for who was going to finish 26.
That's incredible, man. It was a learning curve. It was a learning curve for sure, but that just pushed us to do better for the following years coming. And now this year we're hopping into the car together again after my brother taking off a year break. So very excited for that. It's going to be super exciting year coming up.
For sure. And then there's obviously like the whole, you obviously went from that conversation of like, finishing 26, 27, like the next year, a couple of top 10s, even one race I remember specifically being at Road America, the famous Road America race that Alex Garcia was leading for about, what would you say?
Almost the entire
probably
race.
30, 40 minutes out of a 45-minute race. Like I remember you started 5th and then you started climbing your way up. Started ninth, right? So you qualified ninth. So you had a strong qualifying, and then you fought your way up to. And mind you, it was raining too, so it wasn't even optimal conditions for you to be, duking it out with these guys. So, but then you worked your way up to first. And I remember I was like walking through the track. I looked up, and Road America has that big screen, and I see Alex Garcia first, and I was like, I had to like kind of like dust my eyes off. And I was like, there's no freaking way this man is first right now. So talk a little bit about that race. I guess that's kind of like, that was a big one. A lot of people like to hear your POV on what happened and kind of like the entirety, because leading for almost the entire race and then ending the way it did, it was definitely detrimental.
Yeah, man, it was a very big learning curve and a very big mindset switch from that race, from prior to that race to, during and after. I honestly did not think too much of the race. We knew it was raining during qualifying, so we knew it was going to be a wet race. I know I have some decent good practice, especially from getting the best training from Skip Barber Racing School. But I don't know, I just didn't put too much thought into it. Just put my head down and just drove how I know how I can drive. And I was just picking the drivers one at a time, just setting myself up, setting the corners up, and just being smart with the moves so I can get to the lead. And then once I got to the lead, it just honestly did not feel real at the moment, but I kind of had to take myself back and realize all the hard work I've been putting in has led up to this moment. So you need to enjoy it and fight, the best you can to hold that position. And then, it was just too late of a call on my end and on my spotter's end, where someone had dive bombed on the inside coming into turn 12, and just he wasn't going to make the corner. No idea why they decided to dive bomb, but decided to take me out in the process as well, and that kind of ruined my race. But it was a really good mindset switch to, you have the capabilities of fighting with the leaders of the championship, and you can put yourself in that position if you just put your mindset to it.
What was going through your head in that moment? Like literally being first, leading the pack, going into the kink and looking back and seeing an entire field behind you of GR cars that normally you'd be mid-pack of, or, top 10 of, but still kind of in the middle of all that like craziness that GR has. Like what was kind of going through your head in that moment?
Kind of just all the hardships and all the DNFs that we've had throughout the year, and all the mishaps, all the crashed outs, and it was just such a surreal feeling having the entire pack behind me, and I was leading the race for once. It it honestly did not feel real, but it felt so accomplished, I guess you can say, at the moment, that all my hard work over the last 2 years has finally shown some type of results. And I just couldn't be any happier to get back into the car after that race and just try and do the best I could.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was incredible. I think that was definitely one of your more monumental races, even though it ended the way it did. It definitely showed that you could compete and that you deserve to be at the top of the pack with the other guys that are there. So kudos to them, and also kudos to you. And I think let's just take it back a few more steps here and maybe talk about some of the stuff that got you into racing. So, I mean, I know we kind of talked about this before, but like, what initially kind of sparked your interest in motorsports before you even got behind the seat of a car at, track days at Sebring? What initially got your interest in motorsports?
Honestly, it was my brother and just YouTube. Honestly, it was just I lived my life on YouTube, just watching car videos and just watching racing videos, and playing video games as well, playing GTA, played a lot of Forza. Just slowly got into cars by myself, just slowly started looking up more research. And then as I grew older with my brother, we started building cars together. He started getting more into cars. He's 5 years older than me, so he was driving at the time when I was too young to drive. So he was building his car, and I got to work on it a little bit. I got to grow up, learning how to do mechanical work on cars, and it kind of just spiked my interest even more. And then when he found the track, that kind of just opened up a whole nother world of race cars and a whole nother community that we had no idea about. But that
we got to get Michael on the show. I want to hear his POV on all this stuff.
He'll
You helping him.
For a while. But yeah, I mean, that, and just always going to car meets, car spotting out on the street, just doing as much as you can with how little resources we had at the time, with such an expensive sport, wanting to get into it, and with very little resources, kind of do what we got to do.
From day one, obviously you look up and you see like a car that makes you want to get into it and drive. But like really fast forwarding and seeing now, where you're at heading into the 2025 season, looking back at that, who would you say has kind of been, monumental in your racing career that you could look up and say like that person has really contributed, maybe not the most, but has been the most impactful in my racing career?
Probably not per se exactly in my racing career, but I want to say one of the most impactful people, I guess you can say, has been Lewis Hamilton. That's always been a huge name just in the motorsports world, and just seeing what he's accomplished in Formula One and throughout the years, and just outside of Formula One as well, and his brand has been, really inspiring. So that kind of started at a very young age when I found out about Formula One, and then transitioning over to GT cars over the years. I think just really the GT3 class and the GT4 class, how competitive it is, and such big names, from all over the world, from higher class racing, from IndyCar to Formula One, drop all the way down to GT3, from how competitive and how fun the cars are. So I really wouldn't say it's anyone specific. I'd say more it's a series of cars and just a level competition that you get with that series of cars.
So staying on this subject for just a little bit, you actually met Lewis Hamilton, did you?
I did. I forgot about that. I was with my girlfriend on the ski lift at the time, and I heard a British accent to my right of me, and I looked over to my girlfriend. I whispered to her, "I think this is Lewis Hamilton." I noticed the tattoo on.
Why I think he was like fully covered up?
Covered up with goggles and everything, but he didn't have any gloves, and his face mask was kind of down, so you can kind of see half his face a little bit, but not his eyeballs and the tattoos. And I recognized the hand tattoos and the accents. And it was a long shot, but I looked over at her and I was like, I think we're sitting next to Lewis. So then I turned to my right and I look at him and I ask him, I'm like, hey man, are you Lewis Hamilton by any chance? And he looks at me, he's like, yes sir. And then trying not to be a fangirl and freak out, I was just acting all nonchalant, just, oh cool man, big fan, give him a fist pump. Man, my girlfriend gave him a fist pump. We were just talking for 30 seconds I took up to get to the ski lift. But looking back on it, I should have taken a picture, but I think living with that memory and that experience is way better than having to ask a picture and be kind of just like everyone else. I wanted to be more original. If I did see him again in that trip, I was going to ask for a picture, but what are the odds, meeting Lewis Hamilton on a ski lift in the middle of Colorado in the middle of December?
I don't think I've ever heard someone say eyeballs to describe.
I didn't say eyeballs.
You said why would you cry?
Oh. Oops. It's fine.
You said it's all right. It's all right. We own the media. We can curse. It's not something we encourage, but
it's fine.
Go ahead.
Fine.
Say what you want.
Start again.
Say what you want. Say another one right now.
Bingo.
They might not everybody might understand that, but either way, I heard when you said I couldn't see his eyeballs.
I couldn't see his face.
It made me worried for him that he was sitting next to a psychopath. It made me concerned, that you were looking for his eyeballs.
No, I just want to see his face because you can tell a lot by the upper half of someone's face than the bottom half of someone's face. At least for me.
Give me your top 3 local heroes. So people that may have an impact on your racing career, local to you, whether it be drivers that are really close by that really do teach you how to race, or just people that are impactful to your life in terms of racing.
My family is definitely the number one supporter for my racing career. Just anything in general, anything I do that I go full on force, attack it with everything I got. My family always pushes me to do the best, and is always my biggest supporter. My second one I'd say would be my coach. My coach is like no other coach I've had in my years of being in sports and being an athlete. In my earlier years, I used to do basketball and football, and transitioned over to weightlifting and had multiple coaches, and none of them have been as impactful as my current coach now, Carter. He's honestly been the best. He's pushed me to be the most successful I've ever been. The amount of time I've spent with him, the little time I've spent with him in the last year, has felt like we spent the last 5-6 years together. He's taught me more than I can ever imagine. I can't wait to continue to keep working with him, and hopefully we can make it to a GT3 level together, and hopefully one day we can race together. And then for my third, I'd probably say my crew chief, my first car chief. I'd say my car chief. My first car chief was Trot.
Oh, he's gonna be mad about that one.
My first car chief was Trotter.
We're gonna leave that in just so he can see that. It
was a little confusing at first, and they don't like it when you mix their names. But they're very distinct people. But they're very awesome people in their own ways. My car chief, Trotter, was amazing. He had set up my car for the entire year. He's always made sure I was comfortable at all times, that I needed everything to do my race and to be as good as I could. He'd talk to me about the car, how I'd want to set it up, what I wanted to do with the car, what I was feeling. Would go back and forth on ideas on setups, on race strategies, and what we think would be the best. And just the relationship that we've created over the year has been, hasn't been like any other relationships I've had.
That's awesome. So I would say, obviously this year Trotter's not going to be with us, but that's because of a good thing. He did get a huge promotion. He's not going to be at the actual track anymore. So we're going to miss you so much, Trotter, and we definitely had a great year with him, but hopefully we can take a lot more trips to VIR just to see him. So again, going back to kind of that beginning portion of what I wanted to talk about, which is racing 4 different cars last season and doing evidently very well in every single series. So this isn't just you jumping from car to car. TCA, you were sub-champion. TCA received a second-place trophy at the end of the year, actually only competing in a limited amount of races, so it's not something you did the whole series in. So that by itself is definitely something to look at. Losing to first-place PJ, who was a veteran in the sport and knew the car very well, that was no small feat at all. GR, very huge improvements from one year to another. Obviously, we had the race that you led, and then multiple top 10 finishes, and then also you did jump into Formula 4, which is very interesting because that was kind of like the biggest curveball for everyone when you announced that you'd be driving for Skip Barber's Formula 4 series. talk a little bit about that. I definitely want to get to the point where you do mention the double podium that you had at the end of the year. I thought that was super cool. But I do want to hear a lot more about the experience. You raced with the Dan Weldon's son, Oliver Weldon, and a number of other guys that were there. But definitely talk through kind of just your experience with F4, because I think that was really, really impressive how you just jumped into the series mid-season and were able to compete.
So I think it was a very huge curveball, mentally and physically from jumping in from the GT cars to the Formula cars. But to take it even one step back from the TCA, I think that helped transition a lot of my racecraft and fundamentals into the Formula cars. It was a very low horsepower car, 6-speed manual, 3 pedals, very old school, no ABS, no traction, just raw dog in the car, So it's a very momentum-based car, so you really have to drive the piss out of it. Like, you have to drive it to the limits at all times with the very few or very low capable or very, how can I say, like, shitty brakes. Like,
there's no. I can tell you tried your best, and that's all that matters.
The brakes suck on that car, man. Like, that car just sucked on brakes, so you cannot use your brakes to save your life. So it was just all based on momentum and rolling that speed through the corner and just trying to keep up with all these other fast guys out there. It was a very challenging, new step for me, especially competing against PJ, someone, who's been established in that series for 10, over a decade already. It taught me a lot of new racecraft and how other people kind of drive in different cars. You can't drive, every car the same. Every car drives completely different. Even if they look the same, every car drives completely different. So him being the Mini Cooper and me being in the Civic, which was a longer wheelbase, were some pros and cons to it, especially with him as well. These longer tracks, my car would be more beneficial, but the shorter tracks like Barber, he'd have a little bit more benefit. So it was kind of find the limit, and he had to find the limit as well. And it was just...
And then just praying that the car made it to the finish line, I feel like most races, because I know that you were taking out a couple of those races with no car.
Yeah, there was some shortage on parts, some mechanical failures that you can't do anything about it. The guys on the team can't do anything about it. It's just parts break.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We try and be as preventative as we can, but parts break on race weekend and we can't gather.
I think you definitely gave PJ a lot of fun this season. I think the season would not have been as fun for him if it wasn't for you. Even though obviously he ultimately ended up taking that first place trophy, it was still really fun for him to compete for it. And I think that that definitely played a huge part. I remember one race in particular, Coda. That was insane. I think that was like a tenth of a second.
Intense, probably race I had in TCA where it was just back and forth, undercuts every other turn. It was just lead for lead. It was probably the best run for the trophy that I've had all season.
I remember the coverage of that race usually favors TCX, usually favors TC. But that race was so TCA dominant just because of how much action there was. Even in the third and fourth positions that were also fighting it out. But like that race was intense. I do remember that specifically just because you guys were going back and forth. And it was a drag race to the finish line for sure. So that was really cool. I think F4 is definitely a super interesting car. I got an opportunity to do the 3-day thanks to Skip Barber down at Sebring, and I just like even sitting in that car, it's extremely uncomfortable. So like going from the GR where you could practically put air conditioning in this car because it's a road car, and obviously turned into a track car, but like there's so much space in those two cars. Obviously, Honda, what we used to call the Honda SI that Alex was racing, was a lot less comfortable than the GR, but going from that all the way down to the F4 where you're literally half your head is hanging outside these open wheel cars and you're feeling all that wind, all that like speed. What was that like? Like how did you feel going from the GR to that specifically?
It was big, man. I think the biggest thing was the air hitting your helmet. Like I was going down the back straightaway of VIR, and my helmet started to kind of lift off my head. And I lifted because I've never experienced that, and I thought something was wrong. And I immediately came to the pits, and I went to Carter, and I was like, "Hey, man, my helmet's coming off in the back straight." He's like, "Yep, that's normal. That's called aerodynamics, buddy." And that was my first introduction to what aero really does, and how the wind actually affects a car and everything. And after that, I just kind of went back out there, put on my big boy pants, strapped my helmet harder, and just kind of dealt with it. But I think that was my biggest challenge to get over. It was just accepting that half my head is outside the car. I've always been in a closed cockpit car with a roll cage, so you feel safer. You have the halo around you and everything, but you just feel a lot safer inside of a car. So coming into the Formula car, it was a very big mental switch to do, but it was very rewarding. And you drove the car completely different. It has aero, so you have to trust the front wing. You have to trust the wings. You have to trust the aero in the car. You have to trust the grip that the car gives you, and you really can't half-ass that car. Like, it's very nimble. It's very finicky compared to GT cars, where there's a lot more body roll, it's a lot more forgiving if you make an error. In the Formula cars, if you make an error, you're in the grass and you're into the wall immediately. So it taught me a lot of patience, and it's taught me a lot of really finding my racecraft. And that's all I got there.
So I think I sometimes don't want to interrupt you, but I think that's intense for sure. I think that car can definitely cause you to lift your foot off the throttle just a little bit when you feel all that like
you don't understand
just the downforce in there,
and it's scary until you do it.
Yeah.
I Road America during one of the races at the carousel, all the coaches and all the team was telling me, "Hey, stay flat through the carousel," and I was like, "That's absolutely not possible. There's no way you can stay flat, in a Formula car around a turn that's almost 180 degrees. It just doesn't make sense."
But fast forward to VIR, last race of the season. Notably, going into this race, there were two drivers. Obviously Oliver Weldon and Dean Lambros, who were going in fighting for the championship, who were separated by 1 point. That was like the talk of that race. That was a very big deal. And you had not snagged a podium up until that point. You were still kind of figuring out the car. You jumped in mid-season, still kind of getting comfortable. A lot happened that weekend, but talk about that race. Like, what was different about that race? What clicked that led you to kind of like to perform so well?
I think it's the small glimpses of success that I've had in other series at VIR. Something there, it's such a fun track, and I think something had clicked over, the 6 or 7 track days that I had prior to coming into the first season of 23 GR, and then having a glimpse of success there at 3rd place my first year, and then the second year didn't do so well, but still close to a top 10 finish. And it's just such a great track. And with the racing headquarters being located at VIR, we get to practice there a lot. So that's one of the tracks besides Sebring that I have the most seat time at. But I think something just finally clicked there. And even though we were running the grand course, which I've never ran, only on iRacing, I was kind of familiar with it already. And, that was my 5th or 6th race, or 5th, I think it was the 5th race of the season already that I've done. So I had a couple, races under my belt, I've had a good amount of seat time under my belt already. So I think that race, something just clicked, knowing that it was a final race, it was a championship race. And at the beginning of the race, the 2 top competitors had taken themselves out. So that kind of put me, it was unfortunate for them, but fortunate for me, where it put me in an actual podium contention. And I kind of just put my head down and just focused in front of me. I saw how little cars there were in front of me, and I was like, oh, there actually might be a chance of doing, getting a trophy today. And I just put my head down, focus on what's in front of me. And, I ended up passing Dean. It was no small feat. He put up a fight to pass him. And in the meantime, Oliver had put a gap on us, and I was trying to chase him down, but he is just way too good of a driver. That kid,
he's incredible.
That car, he is going to do some amazing, great things. But it was fun competing against him, watching his line, seeing how he drove that car. It kind of showed different driving personalities, and it kind of showed me a little bit how to drive a Formula car better. So now in the future, when I do hop into a car, I can go back to these data points and pinpoint these. I can pinpoint these data points to help me be more successful with these F4s.
Yeah, he's an incredible driver. I mean, even he just recently moved up to USF. I think he's in juniors, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I've gotten to chance to see a couple of his races, even at Homestead, and he's already snagging podiums left and right. Like it's already
his brother are both.
No lapse in time, no learning curve. He just jumped into the car. It was like second nature to him. So phenomenal, opportunity for you to sit behind him for 2 races, not just one, because you double podium that weekend.
It was 2 races back to back. Yeah.
All right, it was 2 races back to back, and you were originally not even going to stay for the first race.
We were supposed to leave back home just because it was just some track issues at the time. It was raining, so we couldn't go out, and then the track had some more delays for corner workers and EMSs that weren't scheduled on time. There were some issues with track officials and marshals, so it kind of delayed the start of our race. But I'm really glad we ended up staying for the entire race there, for the entire day. It's not the day didn't start how we wanted it, but it definitely ended way better than we all anticipated, and I think it was a good opportunity,
Do you feel like there was a sense of you just kind of letting go that race, and you were like, look, this is one of my last races of the season? I think you were a couple weeks out from your triple stint, which was obviously something that you were really looking forward to, really preparing for Indianapolis. Do you feel like as part of you was just kind of like, there's really nothing else I can do?
I took it more laid back and just had fun with it. I'm one of the home tracks. Just sit back, see what you can do. Still put up a fight, but just don't overdrive the car. Don't overdrive yourself, and just have fun with it. And I think whenever you're in that relaxed state of mind, I think you drive the best. And I've learned that, over my career, whenever I'm the most calmest, I do the best. So that race was just, let's see how much fun we can have with everyone, get the most experience I can. And, looking forward for that Indianapolis race where I did that triple stint.
Did you feel like bad at all? Obviously, Dean, we love you so much. Did you feel at all bad for Dean when you took those 2 podiums up, even just the first one? Because after that first race, he was done. There was nothing else he could do to come back for the championship. Did you at all feel bad for him in that moment?
I do think about that a lot. I do hit myself over the head for that, but at the same time, we're all on our own racing journeys. Everyone's still trying to make it too. We're nowhere near the top. So it's like, I don't want to give up my success and what I could potentially earn for all the hard work I've put in just to give it up to someone else. Yeah, I mean, like, props to him. He's been fighting for contention for the championship, but that's racing. Some days some days are not your days, and some days are your race. And that race just happened to be my race, and something clicked that day. And I do kind of feel bad, but at the same time, I'm on my own racing journey. He's not racing for me. He's not collecting my podiums. He's not spending my money. So it's like everyone just kind of stay in your own lane. You still be supportive, be competitive, but you're the one taking home the podium at the end of the day.
So, looking ahead, kind of like obviously past the season. Now you're up to date. You did your triple stint. I think that was phenomenal. You definitely did incredible for all 3 races. You did take home a podium, right, at Indy.
Yes, in the TCA. Yes.
In the TCA, in the Honda, you did snag a first place. I do remember that. I remember that.
We both podiumed that weekend, double podium. It was probably one of the best ways to end off the season. He also got vice champion in the championship, but I mean, both of us put up a great fight throughout the year, and I think coming home in first place really did it for the team. And it was a great season TC. Learned a lot. And, now my brother's going to be doing it this next year. So really excited to kind of pass on the torch to him and show him the ways of the front wheel drive world and kind of just carry him into the next champion of this year, hopefully.
What was that like too? I mean, I know that you guys you had your award ceremony that weekend. What was it like to be sitting, drinking your scotch on the rocks, and out of nowhere they announce Rookie of the Year Alex Garcia for TC? Because they didn't tell you before.
No.
You just showed up,
Man,
and that was for the series. So that's out of TCX, TC, and TCA. They announced Rookie of the Year was going to Alex Garcia because it was your first year, and you didn't even compete for the entire season.
no, I started pretty late. I started
I think it was our second or third round.
The third event, because I skipped Sonoma and Coda. Started on race 2 of Sebring because race 1 parts weren't ready because didn't have the spare parts at the track.
Yeah,
We couldn't source the parts in time, so we missed the race. Again, it was an unexpected mechanical failure, and then Honda wasn't prepared, so it kind of wasn't on us. But I'm still as surprised as you are. I mean, I'm still as shocked. I didn't come into the series to try to win the championship and fight for contention, but honestly did not think I was going to get as far as I did. But throughout the year, just winning podium after podium and kind of showing glimpse of, hey, you might be successful here. You might be able to win the championship. And I don't know, it just felt kind of surreal when they named me Rookie of the Year, just because, I don't know, I think because double dutying the entire year from GR and TCA, there was times where I only had 10, 15 minutes break in between an actual race of GR, and then TCA, the TC America race was lining up and pre-grid already as the GR race was happening. And then the moment it ended, I'd stop, and data download, and then run over to pit lane, hop in the car, and do another 45-minute sprint. So it was challenging at times, but I think that your adrenaline is running so high that you kind of just oversee that. And it's kind of easy to get in your head when you're there at that point because there's so much excitement, so much is happening from car to car that you kind of have to lock in and realize what car you're driving. At first couple of races, I didn't really think about the mindset switch, and I was driving whatever car I was hopping into next. I was driving like I did the first car. So if I was driving the GR first and I hopped into TCA, I was driving the TCA car like I would with the GR, and it really hindered me. So then throughout the race, I started developing that mindset. Hey, you need to switch driving styles. You can't be driving this car like you do with others. So that was kind of probably the biggest learning curve there that I had to do. And I think the hardest part was trying to get in that mindset in that 15-minute break in between the races when I could cool down and just relax for 5 minutes, kind of get my head back in the game, and then switch, hey, you're about to do a front wheel drive race. Focus on this now.
Right. That's incredible, man. I think honestly that was really interesting to see how you handled all that load. Being able to watch that firsthand was definitely fun. So I mean, heading into this season, no triple stints, but you are doing 2 drives.
Double duty.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're hoping out of this year? What's your real goal? And realistically speaking, what have you done to prepare for what you have in mind for this year?
I think realistically speaking, no less than top 10 in GR, 100%, but aiming to be more towards the top 5 and leading the races and fighting for championship contention is definitely the goal this year. Definitely shown a lot of glimpses in the 24 season that we have the capabilities for it and we have all the resources. Everything is there. We just need to put it together. So it's definitely possible. And then coming into GT4 America with my brother, we're super excited for this. It's going to be super new to us, but we've had plenty of seat time in this car. We've practiced as much as we can at VIR, at Sebring. We're on the sim every single night as much time as we possibly can be. I practice on my lunch break in between work and before the practice in between on my lunch break. I practice after work. On the weekends, I spend hours on the sim. So does my brother. We play together all the time, so we can kind of learn from each other. He has a different driving style from me, so kind of learn from him. He learns from me. I think we have a very strong chance of podium a lot, like podium a lot in GT4, and potentially fighting for top 5 championship in the AM class. Last year's results throughout the year are very similar to the times that we were putting up. So I think we have a very strong chance of putting a couple podiums under our belt for GT4.
I'm glad you said that, and I think that's very true. I think you guys do have a very strong chance, and I think we should definitely make a shirt that says podium apostrophe ing podiuming, because that's the only way to freaking say that. So I mean, definitely you have some big goals this year, and I think you've done everything you can to prepare for it. How do you feel like you're gonna physically prepare yourself for this season, even before each race? Like, how do you feel like you're gonna? What kind of like precaution, I guess, or how can you physically prepare yourself for a race?
I think just trying to take off as much stress out of yourself as you can leading up to the race and not thinking about it as much. Uh, Obviously, eating as healthy as you can, just eating the right foods, working out, staying fit and staying active definitely will help. And just not thinking about the race. You know it's gonna happen. You know the race is coming. You know this is a third year in the sport, so you know kind of the ropes of it. You know how it's gonna start. You know the first race is always gonna be the most jitters. You know everyone's gonna be the most intense. But I think just hopping on the sim, just getting the nerves out, just driving the track, getting the seat time, going over data, talking over with your coach and your teammates, and just trying to prepare as much as you can, putting all your puzzle pieces together. So when you do show up to the track, everything's laid out in front of you, and all you have to do is just grab it, put it together, and let the results show the work.
That's awesome. Well, I'm definitely very excited to see what you come up with this season. And honestly, I guess my biggest question after is like, what's next? Like, what happens after 2025 season? What does 2026 look like for you?
I don't know, man. There's a lot. There's a lot. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot. I had a small glimpse of running a TCR in Daytona at the beginning of the year at the 24 hours. So it was.
Oh my gosh, that's right. We haven't gotten to 2025 season. There's a portion of your 2025 season that we have not touched on, and it's the Daytona.
That's fine. We don't need to talk about that.
No, we are. Now we are. And thanks to you because you brought it up so kindly. Now we have to unpack Alex Garcia touching a whole nother car at the TCR at Daytona.
We crashed out. Let's not talk about it. We'll talk about the next.
The roar before the 24 was phenomenal. Then you actually competed in the 4-hour before the 24-hour. Can you just tell me? Just give me a 2-minute synopsis about that race. I know it's still tough. I know it's still tough, and I know it's still kind of like something that you're having a hard time chewing on. And I'm not laughing out of because it happened. I'm laughing because I just immediately my head goes to the 10-minute peacock coverage that you had right outside your car because they didn't want to switch angles. They were just covering you for 10 full minutes, just waiting for you to crash out. Mentally.
And it was my first glimpse of IMSA racing and that level of competitiveness, and it was a blast. None to say. Nonetheless,
there you go.
Nonetheless, it was a blast, but again, just wrong place, wrong time. I thought I had a good run through there. I just got into the car. The pack had passed me. We were under safety car. We had done a driver swap with some tires. I'd messed up my seat belts a little bit, so the pack had passed me. And by the time I got suited up, ready to go, and I was driving out of the pit lane, the pack was already on the bank, turn 2, coming down into the bus stop, and I was just leaving the pit lane. So I had a little bit to catch up to, and fortunately, I caught up to them right after the bus stop. So got up right to the back of the pack. 2 seconds later, green flag. It was a restart. Had an amazing restart. I timed it perfectly. Got a run past, 5 or 6 cars, made up half the field. We were down 20 laps already because we had a fuel pump issue early in the race. So just trying to make up as much ground as we possibly can. And coming into turn 1, there's 2 people fighting in front of me, and I thought I had a better run going to the outside just because I had fresher tires than 90% of the field. So my immediate thought when I got backed up mid corner was just, hey, dive on the outside, take the outside line while they're fighting on the inside. And the inside car just never ended up turning. Took out, well, the inside car never turned. Car in the middle ended up backing out because she didn't want to be involved with that. Clipped him. He turned to the right. And, again, I'm right there at the outside line, and I just got collected with it, and then just ended my entire race there. What sucked the most, it wasn't my car. So it was someone else's car. So not only did I ruin my race, I ruined 2 other teammates' races, and I have to pay for the car. That's what hurts the most, that I have to pay for the car. But I didn't know that the cameras were on me for 10 minutes. That was, I knew I was on national television. I knew this is a very big stage, so I couldn't, flip out. So I was trying to contain my composure as much as I could, but I was very frustrated at the moment. My adrenaline was running through the roof, but there was nothing I could do. It was just wrong place, wrong time. It's another racing incident.
I mean, I just found it so funny that you got so much coverage, but I mean, it's definitely a very difficult opportunity. I mean, how do you bounce back from that? Like, what do you feel that does to your confidence as a driver? Not just that race, but like any race that you felt you've crashed in the past. Like, how do you recover from that and get back on the track and then perform? Because reality is it's a long season. Like, whether obviously IMSA is different, but like with SRO, like when it has happened, you have to just get back in the car the next race and do it all over again. How does that work for you?
It kind of, at least for me, it hinders my mindset a little bit, and my confidence in driving the car, at least for the next 30 minutes of driving the car whenever I do drive it again. After the Daytona race, I was fine because I haven't driven a car, and then when I hopped in the car in March, and a month later, I had all the same jitters that I had from the crash, and I was wondering to myself, I was like, why? I've been driving a car for the last 8 years. Why am I feeling like this? And then I had to rethink to myself, like, hey, last time you were in a car, you slammed into the wall at 60 miles an hour with 2 other cars. Like, maybe that's why. So it kind of you just have to get the jitters out and just not over push your limits and overdrive. At first, you got to warm yourself up, just like you got to warm up the car, kind of warm up your senses, you warm up your confidence to it, and you just slowly start pushing the limits, instead of braking as deep as you can, first lap out on your out lap, take it back, and then the next couple laps start pushing it little by little, and throughout the day goes, you get more confidence and you start pushing like that, and you build yourself back up. But it definitely is hard at first coming back after a crash. It really does, at least for me, it hindered my confidence, but I think that's what defines a good racing driver, if you can bounce back from that and not let it affect you to the point where you can't race a car, or it's affecting your racing style, I guess, or is affecting your performance in racing.
Yeah. What would you say, what's kind of your word of advice for a driver that, is going through that right now, where they got into a big accident and, they're kind of struggling to, find that confidence again?
I think just getting back in the car and just getting that seat time, just not necessarily reliving where you crashed, but you kind of, at least for me, I had a couple crashes at VIR, on the roller coaster and by the first set of S's by NASCAR Bend. And at first it was scary to drive back through there, full sending it. But I think building that confidence back up and just taking that corner again at a lower rate and just, slowly incrementing bigger jumps, I think that really helps build your confidence back up. And again, just getting seat time and just getting used to that car again, getting used to your driving style, and maybe learn from that mistake, from that crash, and learn why you crashed and why you did what you did. And if you could have, there's always something you could change. You could always look back and you can always say, I could have done this better. But at that moment, at that time, you didn't think about it. So maybe that's something to think about for the next time, or just look back, learn from the mistake to try and not do it again,
Do you feel like a lot of drivers, the first thing they want to do is get out the car and never get back into it? Or they just don't, they're reluctant to get back into the car back at that track?
I think it depends on the severity of the crash. I have seen a couple of drivers where they've crashed really bad, and then they're either never going to hop back in that car, or they never want to see the car again. And there's people like me and my brother where we've crashed the same car 5 times, and we've gotten back into it every single time because that just motivated us more to want to do it right the first time and not crash. Like we crashed because we were pushing the limits too much. So now we just need to dial it back, but succeed at that failure that we had there.
Right. That's awesome, man. Well, I mean, I won't take up too much of your time. I really do. I'm glad that we covered that. I think that anybody's listening to this as a race fan and you're watching as a spectator, sometimes we see those crashes and you're like, that's the most interesting part of the sport.
It gets the fans' attention, but then again, at the end of the day, we are drivers, we're human beings, and it does hurt. It does cost a lot of money, when you do crash. But nonetheless,
somebody's paying for it. Somebody's paying for that entertainment.
At the end of the day, but nonetheless, when I'm spectating, as a fan in one of these races, if a crash happens, I'm cheering as well.
You're there for it.
Cool. That's cool to look at. I'm not gonna be opposed to it.
Yeah.
It does
for
suck
sure
for the drivers. I'll hope that the drivers are all okay all the time. But it is kind of one of the most interesting parts of racing, besides the start and the finish.
Right. And I guess another question I would ask, just to end it off, and it would be my last question for anybody that's listening to this that wants to get into the sport, that loves the sport. Maybe they sim at home, and maybe they just don't know what the next step is to take. And I think I've seen this question asked a million times, so it might just be the most interesting part of this podcast. How do you start in motorsports?
I think looking back, with the knowledge that I have now and the experience, I think looking back, my best suggestion would be go to your local racetrack. And if you're able to go to the seasonal racetracks where, the series IMSA, SRO, WRO, and all these series go to, if you're able to go to that, I'd highly suggest going to those racetracks. If you're not able to, then, go to your local racetracks and just talk with people. You make connections, make friends. I think that's your biggest help, where, you just network with people as much as you can. You literally never know who you're going to meet at the track. Like, there was one day at Sebring where me, my dad, and my brother were just walking around the paddock at night. The day ended. We're just walking around just to make some friends. We had raced with a couple of cool people and a couple of cool cars early in the day. So wanted to talk over about our day with them. And turned out when, we were talking throughout the whole entire night. And when they had offered us food at night, he actually ended up being the owner of Sonny's Barbecue. And Sonny's Barbecue is a nationwide barbecue restaurant. So it was crazy to meet the owner of Sonny's at a random track day in Sebring on a random Saturday night, But that's the connection I'm talking about, because he had connected us with a trailer company when we were looking to buy some race cars and the trailers that we needed to tow them and everything. And we actually ended up getting a great deal because of his connections. And then we had connected him with a couple of our people that he needed some connections with. So I think just going down to your racetrack and just making friends with people, talking with teams. If you have business cards, if you have any services that you feel like you can offer, I'd say definitely offer them. Teams are always looking for hospitality, for techs, for any type of work. There's always work to be found. You just gotta find it. It's hard.
How would you say from the driver's perspective that works in terms of like somebody who wants to get behind the wheel of a car?
I'd say
that is an interesting point, for people that want to get into motorsports, period, and be at the track. Because it's
live.
True. Yeah. How do you secure a drive?
Still go up to racetracks, like go to your local racetracks, and I say talk to more race teams and just talk with people and just get a feel for pricing, see what people charge, see. Sometimes racing is not as expensive as you think. You can budget it. You can budget racing, like you can race. You can race at a really low budget,
Especially some of these series that are coming out. There's a lot of stuff that people don't know about. I didn't even know that Champ Car or that.
There's a lot of local races that are cheap that people just don't get as much coverage. But there's a lot of people in that. There's, like you were saying, the Champ Car. There's SCCA. There's NASA. Right. There's these like club day oriented races that help a lot. That want to. If you want to get your foot in the door, you don't have to necessarily pay a full race team. You can go racing by yourself with your own car. I mean, I used to go to the track days with my daily driver. I used to drive that car to school and work, and on the weekends I'd go down to a track where before, I'd just swap parts over to like the race car parts, or I'd stack them in the car. I'd drive the car down to Sebring. We'll go down there. We'll swap the parts over. We'll race the day. We'll swap the parts back to
What parts are you swapping over? Just tires,
your
brakes?
tires, your brakes, your calipers. Like we had a full brake system set up, and we'll take the brakes from our daily brakes that you use to your racing brakes. So your racing brakes.
How early were you starting the day at Sebring? Like if you pulled up to Sebring and you were planning on doing
we
that.
would wake up at 3 a.m. to drive the 2 hours. Show up there at 5:30. Swap the brakes, which takes about an hour. Off 4 corner on 3 cars. Ish around there. The gates, registration, everything opens up around 7. And that's if everything went perfectly. Nothing ever goes perfectly fine, especially with us. So, it was a challenge at first, but I think that's what made us love it more was
That's awesome. Yeah,
how much
that's so true.
struggled, and we didn't just, jump straight into the top level. We kind of started from the bottom and worked our way to the top, and we kind of saw the process and the ladder it took to get to here, and then it helps now other drivers, and it helps me understand the sport more, and it helps pass this knowledge over to new drivers coming into the sport, and kind of showing them an easier path that they can take and not struggle as much as we did.
Yeah,
Definitely
I think that's huge too, because people only see this, right?
Yeah,
they only see
the top
entering
level,
into the season,
all
he's
that.
getting into
They don't see all the
GT4.
work that
Yeah, they don't see that. They see the GR86, the Aston Martin. They don't see the the M3 back then, or the Mustang. What were you taking? What was the daily driver you were driving down there?
Mustang GT.
The Mustang GT. Is that the one that you clipped the harness on?
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
my god.
Yes. When I was gonna strip the entire car for a full race car build, I saw the wiring harness. I was like, I don't need this. Got the biggest gardening scissors that my mom had in the garage. They were like a foot big. And I grabbed the wiring harness with one hand, grabbed the scissors, and I just chopped it. And I looked at it and I started stripping all the wires apart, pulling them off the car. And at the end of the day, I was like, let me see if the car even starts. Car didn't start. And I was like, I really did it now. I really did it. I did it, So then I had to call my
That was the one.
that was the one. So I called my brother that was way more mechanically inclined than I was at the time. And he looks at me and he said, "You fucked up, buddy. You're gonna make this a mechanic." So,
I can hear Michael looking at you and saying, "You're cooked.
yeah,
You're cooked, buddy."
yeah. And I fucked that up pretty good. So I had to take it to my mechanic that was going to the time, and then from there it was pretty much just downhill. It turned into a full-on race car. $20,000 later, raced it for 3 years, and then from there that really what spiked that motorsport interest.
Well, if you learn to love it then I can definitely see why you love it now. So thank you for sharing your many years of experience with us,
There was a lot
including
of
all of that.
struggles at the beginning, but I think that's what kind of paved our way, or that's paved our career to what it is now.
Alex, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I know for the people that are listening, if you are listening, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I hope that you grabbed some valuable information from here, whether it be just Alex sharing his experiences or in general, if you're new to the sport and you're interested in getting into the sport, I hope that he was able to provide some valuable insight on how to do that. I do agree, getting at the track and being around it is probably the best. Even if you're not talking to anybody that's directly associated with the team, just being around the sport, because you never know who you're going to talk to.
It definitely builds more passion, more feel, more love for what you want to get into. Surrounding yourself around those people, it definitely builds you up a lot more as a character too.
Yeah. I think there's only a handful of tracks that are conveniently located, but for the most part, most people are driving hours to the middle of absolutely nowhere to be at these racetracks. So you're going to end up talking to somebody that's interested more in the sport more than you are, and knows just a little bit more than you do, and you'll definitely gain a lot more valuable insight from that than just sitting at home wishing that it were happening. So for sure, that's very, very credible and very valuable. And, first of all, thank you so much for spending the time with us, dude. I know that you have a very busy schedule, and I just dragged you to sit down in front of your computer for an hour and some change. But thank you. We hope that you guys stay tuned for our next episode of Full Grip. We hope that this first episode was a huge success and that you stayed tuned all the way through the end. If you're listening to this very specific, we have a very special segment that we're going to share with you and nobody else. I need you to go grab your helmet, and we're going to show the podcast right now.
Right now.
Fresh first look ever. Do you actually have it right next to you? Did you know I was going to do this? You're going to sleep with it?
It's actually right here.
This is a first reveal. Alex just got his helmet today. That is incredible, dude. I'm so worried that the pink on that is not going to match the pink that's on the car that's wrapped. I hope he used Charlie Edward 2660. That is beautiful. That is gorgeous. So, we're pumped, dude. We're pumped. Full Grip is here. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode. It'll probably be Michael Garcia or Cooper Brohl or hopefully Thomas Norquist. One of those three guys are going to be on the show next, so definitely stay tuned. We'll see you guys in the next one.